question. There were two members here who had their contracts in place. Their pay raises were in there, and they were not given. And that's factual. That's not.
Excuse me. Excuse me. No, I disagree with that. Both chiefs got their salary increases and got a contract last year.
Last year, but not the year before that, sir.
No. We didn't
And
have
those
another.
pay raises are in there, and as of right now, Chief Blakey has still been waiting for his pay raise back from September. Mine is in January, was my anniversary date.
Right, okay. And if you want your old contract, I'll continue it. I'm trying to give you a better contract than you have.
This is not a fight, Mr. Gonzalo.
Well, I know it
You're
isn't,
making a
but-
statement. I'm here fighting for my beliefs, and that's why when we sat down to negotiate these items, and part of the questions that are coming up here, one, a matter of trust and who believes what. At the last minute, this contract has changed from what we had all agreed to. And that comes back to that same thing, that we're trying to figure out where it's going. These were not part of our discussions.
I indicated to everyone in the meeting that it was going to go to the solicitor for review.
Well,
But did you contact them and tell them that it had changed before it came before
I
us?
thought I did, maybe I didn't, I don't know. I may have verbally, I don't know. I didn't put it in writing. No, I didn't.
All right.
I don't
Well,
believe.
again, so those are things that we need to work on to make sure that everyone understands
Timing was an
what is
issue.
going on. All right, so,
I have a few items, if I may. Under item number 8, sick leave and personal leave. In the last model contract, we had the employer may require a physician's certificate after we had 3 days, not 5. Is there a reason why it went from 3 to 5? Normally, 3 is an industry standard.
This was what the body had requested, and I did not think that that was a problem.
Is there a particular reason why it would go 5 days and not see a physician to get a
Just said that
note?
was a work week, I think, I'm speaking for everyone, I believe it was because that was a work week, and someone was going to be out. Fortunately, to date, I haven't used too much sick time, but I think it was just basically because we all work a 5-day work week, generally.
So after.
But do you understand that this is to, meaning 3 days, you're out. You could be out 5 days.
Sure.
But after 3 days,
After 3
if
days.
you're that sick, you should have gone to a physician and gotten a note that says, yes, this person is sick, and he's going to be out 5 days, 10 days.
I don't think, there's no
So-
particular reason, I think that was just a general consensus that they went for that. I won't speak for everyone, but I don't think that was a big problem, I think it was just a general consensus. So, whatever the council, speaking for myself, again, Mr. Gonzalo, I'm sure is going to speak with the department heads about that, but
Okay, that's just,
I
all
don't have a problem with it.
right, thank you. That's just one of my comments. And I believe this went from 2 personal days to 3 personal days? Is that?
Yes. Some of the union contracts have 3 personal days. And I didn't believe, see, part of the purpose of this contract was to try to give the department heads a lot of the benefits that the unions had. Because I didn't believe that department heads should have less benefits than the unions. So this was an attempt at doing that. Same thing with the vacation schedule. This is what the, some of the unions have.
Okay, and next, in the old model contract, there was a clause in here for expense reimbursement, and I don't see that in this contract.
Well, I think that that's a given. If the employee has an expense that is an expense of the town, that we certainly reimburse them. We're not gonna have them buying supplies or whatever and then not reimburse them. I think that's just a natural
Right, but
given.
it was part of the contract, and also part of that, it was to receive prior written approval for the expense. That was part of the expense reimbursement. You may want to review that again.
okay, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that part of what was going to go into the personnel policy?
No.
Because that's where it should be, not in the contract.
No, because this is the final contract that,
No, I'm just saying, I personally believe.
I don't know if we could see the personnel manual, that would be helpful.
Yeah, but it belongs in a.
But since we don't have that,
But it belongs in a personnel policy, not in a contract, in my
well,
opinion.
you could go so far as vacation time could be in the personnel manual and not in a contract. You could argue for it, a lot of this stuff should not be in a contract, it could be in a personnel manual. So, I just want to mention that's not included here. Under termination, section 15, prior contract had a clause in here for death. The contract terminates upon the death of the employee. That's not in here.
That goes without saying.
Well,
I think that was intentionally left out.
Well, actually, I have to agree with Joan on this one, because every contract I have ever seen has that in there. Just to make sure that somebody,
Have rights.
but it's just to make sure that somebody doesn't show up in your stead to collect the pay.
Maybe you should refer to the Congress, Mr. Rogers.
highly possible.
Yeah, actually, my contract says that.
Yeah.
Yeah, terminates upon death.
Also, under termination clause, actually, item number E, this was not in the prior contract, model contract, but it actually is very valuable. The employer may terminate employee or suspend employee for designated period of time in accordance with this section. Any such termination or suspension of employee during the term of this agreement prior to its termination date shall be governed by the town charter, section 2010. I think that's a very
1210A.
1210A. And I think in order to get, at will, I think it might be a matter of just saying, instead of prior to its termination date, the contract termination date, you leave that out. It just means, even if you were at will, you're subject to 1210 of the charter. And I think that's what you need for protection, rather than an extension at the end. So I think if you just take out the prior to its termination date, I think that would cover their concerns. So that was a very good addition to this contract. I'm impressed. Then number 16, severance package. Severance package is usually in the case of termination, and the prior contract did have it as a termination clause. This says in case of resignation. I think it should be changed to in case of termination. There is a severance package that applies.
Well, I
Because-
think that went along with, I think one of the managers mentioned that. That went away with doing, removing you from your position for no cause. If I just come up to you and say, well, this is it, I don't like you anymore, I don't think you're doing a good job, so I'm going to let you go.
But I don't think that can ever happen with this clause 15E, where it has to go through the charter, and the charter says the town council has to approve the termination. So I think that's the protection that they need.
Well, if the charter says it, that's the protections that they need, obviously, or they have,
That's the protections that they have.
right.
But the severance package, you usually only receive that if it's a termination, not a resignation. So I'm confused. This is saying in case of resignation, you're going to give them a severance package?
No.
That doesn't make sense.
No, it's termination. Yeah, I know, yeah.
But it says resignation, so I think it's in case of termination, the employee may negotiate a severance package.
Yes, that is.
And it's may negotiate, so.
Yes. Yeah, there is no written severance
Right.
package.
Yeah.
Right. It does say may negotiate,
Yeah.
and it must be approved by the town council. So that's fine, it's just the resignation should be termination. those are all the changes that I would recommend. Thank you. Anyone else? Sorry.
What do we have a brief pause there?
Okay.
So what terminology are we going to use at the end? Extension of contract, what was,
Right.
there's been two things.
Exactly 120 days.
Right, failure to notify the employee within the specified time frame extends the contract for an additional 120 days.
Okay.
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 All right, anything else? No. Okay, all right, so Jim, you'll work up those changes, and we'll take a look at them. I'll put this on the next town council meeting, which is the March 11th, for review
Or possible vote.
and possible vote. Oh, I'm going to be exhausted tomorrow.
You're going to be on a plane.
I know. Okay, we have no bids and requests for proposals. Town Administrator, January Department Reports, 5-year capital plan.
Well, at the,
Capital plan didn't have, no, it's your capital plan. Sorry, I'll just press those things.
Seems everybody's leaving.
Well, obviously, this is the real interesting stuff.
I'll be with you in a minute.
That's Jay. You got one?
Okay, Jim?
How about the Oscars?
I'm sorry. I think the January report's first, so you might want to ask if there's any questions on that.
Yeah, I did. January Department Report. And I said, and the 5-year plan, but he passed out a new one.
At the, I don't know, do you want to wait for the other two members, or do you
No,
want to
the
continue?
Department 13, January.
Oh, I
reports
thought you
first.
said capital plan.
No, I said both.
Okay. The council requested that the department reports be included in the body of the meeting, in the event that they wanted to ask any questions. So, do you have any questions?
I have a quick question. Is Chief here? Could you just provide some brief color commentary on the types of felonies and misdemeanors?
Color commentary, that's a good analogy.
Well, every month we get this report,
Correct.
and I think it's valuable information, but I know personally, aside from reading what's in the police report in the paper, I don't have a good sense of the type of potential criminal activity that's
A
happening
felony
in
could be any
town.
type of a crime against a person, depending on the severity of it. Assault and battery could be a misdemeanor, or assault and battery with a dangerous weapon that would become cataloged as a felony. Values of monetary values would be also classified with the severity of the crime. The lesser value, it would increase of over a certain dollar amount, then it would become a felony. That's how you differentiate primarily.
Are there any trends that concern you?
Trends, well,
In
last,
terms of-
as you know, last fall and spring, spring and summer, we had, as I listed to the Budget Committee, well over 60 house breaks.
Yeah.
Those are, that really gets to me and really sticks to my quality of life issues for the community, that people want to be able to leave their home and know that it's going to be secure. That's the, and then, of course, then we deal a lot with, being a bedroom community, we deal a lot with domestic violence. And about 85% of our work is motor vehicle orientated, and 85% of our, safe to say 85% of our work is generated by drugs, whether that be house breaks, assault and batteries, larceny from a person, robberies, breaking into cars, those type of things, is probably the biggest driving force.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do, for the fire chief. Forgive me for my nativity on outside help. You contact like Westport, Fall River, Little Compton. Does that cost any money to
Coming in or going out, neither way.
Coming in?
Coming in does not.
It doesn't.
If we go out, per se, to Fall River, we do reap a benefit from that because we do bill the patient for going medical aid into Fall River. So there is a benefit to the town for doing that. Mutual aid given within the state of Rhode Island by outside communities is given at will or free of charge, per se, from each department.
No, don't say that, Will.
I know, I did, after I said it, I tried to catch myself, but it was too late, it was already out.
All right, I wasn't sure if there's a cost.
No,
that was-
none whatsoever.
Any other?
Well, since we're being friendly, is Gareth still here? I think
I'd like to add to you one thing. In your the report indicated that we received a generator. Since that time, it's been taken away, if you will. The director has since resigned, and I'm back in the hunt, informed Mr. Gonzalo that looking for a generator for the radio tower. So we're back to square one after 2.5 years. So we are looking at that. So that's not accurate.
Thank you.
So you
Talk
mean
to you
so
now.
you mean the generator that's coming here to the town hall could actually go there instead? Sorry, I just thought I'd try it.
I was just wondering that, sort of piggybacking on with what Councilor Gerlach mentioned, 88 permits, $24,000 in permit fees collected. How are we looking over this past, I know if you look at it at sort of a macro level, the recession, obviously the first thing to dip off is people don't put the porch on, they don't build a swimming pool, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Have we come out of that, or are we still in that, or?
We're still in it.
Yeah.
However, Tiverton has been very fortunate for whatever reason in that, unlike some of the surrounding towns, our building never stopped. Portsmouth, Middletown, some others, it went absolutely flatline. We have reduced to what I think is the pre-boom level, just based on looking back into the files. So that we're now just basically maintaining, and people have been, developers have been putting houses up, houses have been selling, no new houses are sitting on the market very long. And so we have stayed at a very steady pace.
Good, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Anything else?
I have one final question. Chief Blakey.
I know that's what it's
He's getting his exercise.
All I want to say, see what happens when you all show up?
Okay, I'll learn, lesson learned.
What if you can help speak to what the police department accreditation would actually mean for the community, if we do, or if we're able to achieve it?
We've taken the first steps necessary toward accreditation. What primarily, God bless you, is the police department is probably one of the is more likely to be sued than any other department. And accreditation, statewide accreditation, will give us basically policy and procedures that have been accepted by the entire state. It'll help us better in any type of litigation. It also gives us a basis if an officer acted in a particular way. What do you base it on? I base on, this is the policy and procedure. We'll have written, up-to-date policies and procedures. We just updated our rules and regulations. We've now, we had 2 people just certified to start the accreditation process, and that's where we're driving toward now. And it also allows us to apply for grants because we're accredited. And the Interlocal Trust, which is our town's insurer, already gave us $500 toward some of the fees associated, and once upon receiving accreditation, they will give us another $500. So they fully support us.
That's great.
Endeavor.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? 5-year plan.
Again, at the last meeting, the council requested to see the 5-year plan. I've indicated that this is a 5-year plan that was generated during this budget season. So it's a new plan, but it's, at this point, unreviewed. And, but you have it so that you can get a feeling for the needs of the town.
Jim, just for my own clarification, where it says replace car 1, replace car 3, is that who the car belongs to, or is that age, or what?
No, replace car 1 is the fire chief's vehicle.
Okay.
And car 3 is another one of the vehicles in the fire department.
Okay.
What about car 54?
Car 54 we've abandoned.
Okay, I may have to.
I'm getting tired.
Getting restless.
Is there a reason why all the fire department list is in the first year?
I'm sorry.
Is there a reason why the fire department requests are not spread out?
That's the way they were submitted.
He wants everything.
Okay, but
I understand, that's why I'm saying it has not been reviewed, I have not,
All right.
okay,
this came right out of the requests.
okay.
If I may, Mr. Aruda, it's called the bulldozer effect, basically. We've been putting things off and putting them off and pushing them. When we have a timeline that an engine should be replaced every 5 years, a rescue every 4 years, and so on down the line, those are all things that have just keep getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So what I do is, from when I first got here 8 years ago, those have all been moved back 1 year, and that's what's happening. They're all just piling up. It's not going to do any good to take them and spread them out. Those are the needs that I have now.
Okay.
Then we have to, there's a priority list that goes with that I prioritized out of that, but it's just because they've all been getting pushed back for 8 years that we're at that point.
Oh, I might add, this is in the priority order that he submitted.
I know it's an extremely unrealistic number, but again, I'm just trying to show you that the need doesn't go away simply because we push it off 1 year. If you look down the road, as we push it forward, more things are going to come into that pile.
This goes to my earlier point of having capital debt and not addressing it when
Right.
things come due, and what would lower taxes, and it was accrue more debt.
Right.
How we pay for that later. It's-
Absolutely.
And I think that's why it's critical that we have the list of the
Right.
model year, the vehicle, mileage it is, condition, so that we know when it will need to be replaced. And it sounds like a lot of this stuff will need to be replaced sooner rather than later.
Jim, what's your proposed vetting process on this?
I'm going to look at these, I'm going to sit with the department heads and go through each one of these and try to make it reasonable and ensure that these are in fact needs. For example, obviously, the first one, the fire department, $3.2 million in 1 year, that's impossible. So we're going to have to work at spreading this out. and it may even go beyond the 5 years. $3.2 million is a lot of money for only one department. You know, replacing a fire engine every 5 years at a cost of over $500,000, that's $100,000 a year for each one of them. That might be a little too aggressive. The fire chief and I will have to discuss that.
I think it's critical. I sit here and try to debate, you know, going back to the conversation that we had earlier in the evening. I mean, you see numbers like this, and, you know, the first thought that crosses my mind is, where do you begin? And I think it's important for the general public, the taxpayers of this town, to understand, to have a really good sense of what the needs are. Now, granted, this is just a first pass, and I think it's important to lay out a 5-plan or a 7-year plan or what have you. But there's some level of, you know, public education that needs to happen here. And I'm not too sure how we go about that, so that the folks who call Tiverton home and pay taxes here understand what the need is and can understand the potential trade-offs that we are debating here, you know, between maintaining a certain level of services that folks expect with a community of this caliber versus the fiscal reality that we're faced with in terms of trying to keep taxes at a certain level. That's not an answer to this problem, but I think, you know, the public needs to understand this in some way, shape, or form, that, you know, this is, I don't even know where to begin on this. I mean, even if you spread this out over 5 or 7 years, I mean, you know, it's...
Here we are struggling to buy one DPW truck with a plow to replace 30-year-old vehicles. Where do you begin?
Yeah.
Might be a little unrealistic.
Well, you know, obviously, you know, you look at this and the numbers are boggling. And that's why this 5-year plan has to be looked at, and financially, this town is going to figure out a way of somehow putting money aside that can be carried over, even though we can't carry over, but some sort of restricted fund that dollars can be set aside in, so that after maybe 2 years or 3 years, you can purchase a specific piece of whatever, because this is not unique to Tiverton.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
You know, which is sad. I mean, every city and town in the state is looking at the same thing, saying that we need to provide for the health and safety of our residents, but at what cost? Because unfortunately, there are only X amount of dollars that can be squeezed out of the town of Tiverton. And yes, we can go into deeper debt, you can bond, you can do all those things in order to get everything you would like. But sometimes you have to be realistic, and we'll have to look and say, okay, out of all these things, on all these pages, what are the most critical? What are the most absolutely must-have? Or what can we get by with? And nobody wants to live that way, but I think if each one of us look at our own households, we look at what can we get by with. We know what we need, and we know what we want. But financially, sometimes we have to say, what can we get by with?
Now you realize what my comment was at the last meeting, that I didn't know how to fund all these needs, okay, over the next 5 years, that, you know, maybe a bond would be necessary or something. That's, you know, I'm looking at this, and as you say, where do you begin?
If I can,
And if I might just finish my comment, this is a situation where we do have needs, okay, and maybe we can somehow get this no carryover changed somehow, that maybe a percentage of the excess go into a capital account for future purposes. So, you know, if there is and I don't know what the percentage would be, I'm just going to spit something out. If we had a $200,000 surplus at the end of the year, then maybe 50,000 of it, you know, 25% should go into a capital improvement fund, or 50% or something, because we're reaching the level that we haven't had before. Okay? Years ago, prior to, I believe, all of you, we were taking as much as 700,000, 800,000, and over $1 million, I believe, in one year, $1.2 million, we took out to offset the tax rate. Okay, so we could buy and spend whatever we needed to do. We don't do that anymore. When I became the town administrator, the general fund surplus was $429,000. And that was one of my goals, was to get it up to the 3%. And we've done that, and we're going beyond that. So maybe at some point here, we can take a percentage of the surplus and put it into a capital improvement fund. Because I don't know that we should raise taxes to fund this capital improvement account. I don't know, okay? We don't have the room to do it, you know, it seems. It's always lower the increase, much less put it into a capital improvement account. So, I don't know, maybe we need to take some of our surplus and fund that account.
The comment I was going to make, and I'll be very, very brief in response to Mr. Gerlach's question, is what I think I've learned on the town council, and perhaps Ed too as well over the last 4 years, is that you get into an absolute mess like this, one, by just kicking the can down the road for 30 or 40 years, and then wondering, gee, what the hell happened? And then number two, as part of that type of thinking, not planning for the future. You know, I recognize there were different times and different circumstances, but if you read the financial improvement plan that Mrs. Surratt and Jim put together for the Tiverton Police Pension Plan, you read this page and a half, or whatever it was, and it tells you what the heck we've been doing wrong for years. We haven't been meeting our expenses year after year after year. We haven't funded projects. We haven't funded obligations year after year. And now we're paying the Pied Piper.
So additionally, you might want to add sewers to here. Just line item for sewers. And the DPW need that canopy over the fuel. Those are two identified tonight.
Okay, anything else on that? Okay, obviously, we're going to have to look at it, and again, there is no answer that can be given, you know, right now. It's something that this council is seriously going to have to look at, and it's not only encumber this council, but councils to come. We have to look at the long-range planning for the town and make some hard choices. We may have to look at some ways of funding this going forward, whether it's a percentage of the surplus or a line item that is restricted, that just sits there until it builds up enough to be spent, or whatever. That's something we're going to have to look at. Okay. Council announcements, comments, and questions.
I would just have one, and, you know, I'll be very brief here. I know we are all tremendously busy. I'm certainly busy myself. But I would just ask my fellow councilors, I think one of the reasons why I ran for this office, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work in this capacity, is to try to advance some short and long-range goals for the town. So I know we're all busy. I know we've been kind of, you know,
working on and off to get goals on the agenda. I would just hope that, we can address that sooner rather than later, because given some of the planning that I imagine needs to be involved in achieving those goals, every month counts, so. Just more a plug.
Anyone else? Okay. Town solicitor, Tiverton Stop, requests legal memorandum regarding tolls.
This was a memo which was requested at the last meeting, looking into what's involved. This does not include, research of tens of thousands of pages of the Federal Register. It does include the research of the Rhode Island law. The basic question is, the answer as to the transfer from the DOT to the Turnpike and Bridge Authority is, there really isn't any legal standard. There are no particular requirements. It's a pure legislative act. To stop it or reverse it is going to require a legislative act. And obviously, the town council and the other communities are well on their way in that effort before the General Assembly. Then the second issue about if it should go through, what would have to happen before the tolls includes a discussion of the applicability of the Administrative Procedures Act, which we do think would apply, in fact, to the process. So that once the bridge is transferred, if it's transferred, the Rhode Island Turnpike and Bridge Authority itself will have to hold a real public hearing. That's when there'll have to be real notice as opposed to the 3 or 4 day notice the last time around. They'll have to hold a real public hearing and a real rulemaking process in order to establish the tolls. And there may be something we can do there. Certainly, as far as the setting the amount of the tolls and so forth, we might be able to have an impact at those public hearings.
Okay. And this was forwarded to Stop?
I don't believe it has been yet. Provided to the council first, and with your okay, or without your objection, will be forwarded to them. And it's obviously a public document to everyone.
Yeah, it's a public
anyway.
document, so. Send it out.
Mr. President, I have a couple of announcements.
Okay.
The first one is, I believe I indicated to you that our engine 4 caught fire during the storm while it was in use. It is still offline, and the highway mechanic is still looking to repair it. So just to let you know about that. And then Chris Romline, who is a member of the Recreation Commission, was able to get and received a $10,000 grant from Newport Hospital to do an obstacle course at Bogamash Field. So they're going to be working on that. That's all.
Is it going to fit with the pavilion? Is there enough room?
We'll make it fit.
Where is that pavilion?
It'll be under the gazebo.
Yeah. Madam Clerk? Oh, goody. Okay, seeing no other business, do we have a motion, Mr. Lambert?
I move we go into closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island law, Chapter 42465A2, Ray Potential Litigation, Site Ready Materials and Recycling Company.
Second.
All those in favor?
And continue in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island